Hi, my name is Antonio. Welcome to my restaurant, Trenchtown. Come on in. This is our garden area. Before water restrictions, we had grass, and before lockdown, we had customers. This is our courtyard. Inside we have our bar and dance floor area. The courtyard has ample ventilation, a free flow of air, got our COVID-19 spaces, and currently we can seat about 20 people. About as much as the taxi. This year's my rant. My clever partner knows that sometimes I go off on a slightly too passionate rant about politics and I lose sight of what we started talking about. This is him. Would you believe that we're about the same age? He has already had a stroke and a heart attack just before he retired as a maths teacher. I think his slightly aged look and poor health might have something to do with him working for 30 years as a teacher and vice principal in our public schools, educating our kids, struggling with government red tape. And well, we know that some parents struggle to be parents, so our teachers are expected to assume that role as well. He gave up his pension and life savings to open this restaurant with me. I only have a standard 8 certificate, what you guys might refer to as a grade 10. But to get where I am, like most ambitious people, I've had to work really hard, make lots of sacrifices, and save for the last 25 years. To get the business to be as successful as what it was before lockdown, both my partner and I had to make huge sacrifices and work our asses off, much like most people in our situation have done. You know, just a little while ago, I would have been too worried about posting this video, scared of what government and its supporters might do. But more and more, I see people posting and doing the same thing. Can you imagine fighting for freedom and then being too scared to speak out against the government you fought for? We used to employ 48 people, besides DJs, comedians, event organizers, handymen, and many other people that just needed an odd job. We now only have 2 staff members. Besides our staff that are no longer working, we hosted regular fundraisers for students, social awareness campaigns, student meetings, markets, a platform for our young artists to perform and make some cash. But more than that, we were also a safe place for everyone to get together socially and discuss issues that plague our youth today. Issues that the ANC government should have fixed years ago. While I've had plenty of reasons over the years to be angry at our government, I'll try and make this message as much about lockdown as possible and about some of the comments you and your honorable members have made during this devastating time period. On a side note, guys, we really should discuss changing that title you have gave yourselves as honorable. Do you even know what it means? Everything I mention here is easily found on reputable Google sources and maybe not as reputable SABC, our very unbiased broadcasting system. We also tried really hard not to use any profanity, but by now most of you know that when we discuss SA politics, that is not always possible. First, let me start off by saying I fought for the ANC to get into power, and like many others like me, we risked our lives and those of our families fighting against the apartheid government. I will never regret fighting against the oppressive apartheid government. I cannot say I feel the same about the ANC. As you can imagine, when the ANC finally did come into power, it was a very proud and emotional day for most people. The ANC was our savior. The ANC could do no wrong in our eyes. But we were wrong. I really wish we knew then what we know now when it came to voting the ANC into power. If only we had known that when we shouted the slogan, "Power to the people," it really meant all power to the ANC and F the people. Recently I saw a post on Facebook by one of my friends that pretty much sums up how our response has changed over the years when people talk down on the ANC, saying things like the ANC do not know what they're doing, they will steal everything and leave the country messed up. In the 90s, our response to these people would go, F yourself, you don't know what you're talking about, you stupid racist. In early 2000s, our reply would be, well, it's only been a few years, just give them a chance, you will see. Just before Zuma, our response was, well, you know, they're just getting rid of some of the bad apples. They will get it right. Soon, we stopped replying. We became silent, as the ANC were proving them correct daily. For me, personally, over the years, as my belief in the ANC has slowly eroded and reality set in, my once proud stance on the ANC has turned to shame and anger. I blame myself. I blame the people. How could we have not seen this coming? We could have done things differently. Why did we make it so easy for them? We should have fought back. It took a while before I started putting the blame where it belonged, with the ANC. We laugh and we joke about it because it's how many of us try to deal with the pain and sad reality that the ANC has allowed its people to continue to be raped. And in most cases, not only have they been the instigators, but also the perpetrators of the rape of our people. They muffle out our screams for help with their dirty hands, saying it's apartheid's fault. Now during lockdown, we once again see that same dirty hands coming to muffle out our screams to blame apartheid. It's time we fight back. Shout no, not this time, not again. We're fighting back. We will no longer bleed for you. Mr. Ramaphosa, by the time you did your lockdown, anyone that had been watching the news would have known that something was about to happen. We had already seen a month and a half before your lockdown, hundreds, if not thousands of people returning from China's infected areas at our airports telling us how deadly, how vicious the virus is. So by the time you do your lockdown, in my opinion, it was already too late. But you said we needed 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lockdown to prepare hospitals and medical personnel for COVID. And from what we had heard, it sounded reasonable. Despite how we currently felt about the ANC, we listened, knowing that this was for the greater good. Some of us were skeptical that it will only take 3 weeks. But why would you lie to us about something this important? We should have taken the ANC's reputation into account. 10 weeks later, you tell us that you had known all along that lockdown would only delay the spread of the virus. There is no way for us to stop it. 4 months after the start of lockdown, our hospitals and staff are still not ready, with more corruption and mismanagement of funds. By lying to us and telling us lockdown is only 3 weeks, many people used it just as a time off, taking holiday pay and using it to keep their family entertained. Many went out and bought luxury items to keep themselves occupied during those 3 weeks. If you had been honest with us, I'm sure they would have used their cash sparingly and budgeted. While our health department say they are struggling to find ways to slow down this pandemic, here is an idea. How about all those houses you promised us? That would help. How about running water? That would help. Electricity? That would most definitely help. How about any of the promises the ANC has made over the last 26 years? Any one of them would help us slow down this infection rate. You say you want to use this opportunity while we are all suffering to forge a new economic path. So while we suffer and you sit in your ivory tower, we want to implement something that should have started 26 years ago. You know what would have been a better idea? Maybe instead of the ANC stuffing their own pockets and putting the country into economic ruin, maybe, just maybe, you should have focused on building up your people economically. You admitted that corruption has cost SA people 1 trillion rand, and that is only over a 4-year period. You say this as if you were not there. Well, if you were not there, where were you? Asleep like so many of your honorable members? Or maybe just partying it up on the taxpayers' dime? Okay, so when you say we lost 1 trillion to corruption, most of us cannot comprehend what 1 trillion rand looks like. Here, let me show you. Now, I was gonna write it out numerically, but it's actually faster to spell it out. That gives you an idea how big that number is. Let me explain. Let me explain further. If we take every theft, including all the cash in transit heists for the last 26 years, it will still not amount to the 1 trillion we have lost to ANC corruption over 4 years. Now, I've seen plenty of these robbers getting shot, killed and jailed. However, I cannot say the same for your members who have done far worse. In the 80s we had a saying, don't steal from the government, they hate competition. I think that still applies today. You say that before the economy is rebuilt, young people will be the ones most affected by job losses and closure of businesses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. No sir, this is due to ANC failures. The few businesses that you want to affect belong to a few white businessmen that are on your level. When I say your level, I mean they are all multi-millionaires and billionaires who, if they eventually lose their businesses here in South Africa because of this reformation you're asking for, guess what? They will still be multi-millionaires and billionaires. They will get back into their limos, jets and yachts and sail off into the sunset without batting an eyelid. But what about us, Mr. President, who without the help of the ANC have built ourselves up in our own businesses, have worked most of our lives, have been employing people you had promised jobs to? You waited till now to take it away? Tell me, what do? I only have a standard 8. I cannot go into politics. I stopped stealing ages ago. My wife has been working really hard for me not to be an asshole. So politics is out. What would you like people like me to do, Mr. President? You have asked our youth to overhaul the economy. But this was your responsibility 26 years ago. They tried fighting for their education. The ANC mocked them and answered them with tear gas, bullets and jail time. You have asked them to become once again radical and go back to their former glory days. I remember those glory days. They were not that glorious. Why would you ask our youth to once again go through that struggle? We already did it. All you had to do was follow through. And if they do become radical, what then? Will you be sending in your police, your army, to humiliate them, to beat them, to kill them, like you've been doing? Like Marikana. You know, in my research on Marikana, I know of 153 million rand that was spent into the inquiry of Marikana. These findings were ignored. I know 34 people that were killed, 78 people that were wounded, 250 people that were arrested. This is besides everyone else that was killed and arrested prior for protesting. What I could not find was how many police were arrested. I believe your wealth, like most privileged people, has blinded you to the struggle of our people. Before your elections, You took a train ride with your security. It was late, it broke down, and it angered you. This is not new. This is not even closest to the biggest struggle our people face daily. Every time I see you on TV, you bring up gender-based violence, but this too is not new. I'm sure you remember Kwezu. You said you believed her. But why only speak up 10 years later? Why stay silent during her trial? Yes, I say her trial, because for not one moment do I believe Jacob Zuma was on trial. Do you remember what your ANC supporters and members like Malema called her? How they intimidated her before, during and after her trial? If you truly care about this issue plaguing our society, then tell me, how does a 2-year-old get raped in hospital? There's so much wrong with what happened in this case. It's sickening. But again, this is not new. To date, we have had 5,000 deaths of COVID-19. Do you know what might help us fight COVID-19? Food. According to Tracy Ledger of Wits, 1,500 to 2,000 children die of starvation in hospital, but a further 9,000 die outside of hospital every year. According to some stats, 53 children die every day of starvation. So how do you call for economic reform now when you know that these numbers will increase? How does your government suspend a feeding program during lockdown when most people have lost their jobs, when they cannot feed their children? Why are you taking away jobs when for years you have been promising us jobs? Mr. President, you say you want to use this time, this opportunity, while we are suffering for economic reform. I say no. We need ANC reform. I say it's time for honesty. I say it's time for compassion. I say it's time for our parliament to start behaving with honor and earn their title as honorable.